Have you ever noticed that two people can watch the exact same event and look at the exact same evidence, hear the exact same testimony, and somehow walk away believing completely opposite things? That is exactly what we are seeing right now in the Karmelo Anthony trial. As I record this video, the jury is deliberating his fate. 12 people are sitting in a room, carefully reviewing the evidence, the testimony, and the law. But outside that jury room, something remarkable has already happened. The internet has already largely made up its mind. Some people believe that this is a clear-cut murder case. Other people believe that there is significant reasonable doubt. Some say the evidence overwhelmingly supports the prosecution, and others believe that the defense raised serious questions that cannot be ignored. And what fascinates me isn't just the disagreement itself, but instead, why the disagreement exists. How can thousands of intelligent people watch the same trial and reach completely different conclusions? Today, we're going to take a step back from the emotions and take a step back from the arguments and look at what this case reveals about psychology, social media, and the way that society processes high-profile criminal trials. This video is not about deciding guilt nor innocence. That is the jury's responsibility to decide. Instead, this video is about understanding why this case has become so polarizing, and what that tells us about the world that we live in. Let's begin. On April 2nd, 2025, a tragic confrontation occurred during a high school track meet at a stadium in Frisco, Texas. The incident took place during rainy conditions around a team tent area. What began as a confrontation between teenagers escalated into violence. Austin Metcalf, a 17-year-old student athlete, suffered a fatal stab wound to the heart. Karmelo Anthony was arrested and later indicted on a charge of first-degree murder. Over the last year, the case has generated enormous attention online. Commentators analyzed it, and content creators debated it. And millions of people formed opinions long before the jury entered deliberations. As the trial unfolded, witness testimony, physical evidence, and legal arguments were presented. And yet, despite hearing much of the same information, viewers often came away with dramatically different interpretations. And that's where things become interesting. Because this isn't just a legal story, it's a psychology story. It's a social media story. And it's a story about how human beings make sense of conflict. Let's begin by looking at why so many people believe the prosecution proved its case. According to testimony presented during trial, witnesses describe Anthony entering a team tent associated with another school. Several witnesses testified that he was asked to leave. Some testified that he refused. Witnesses also described statements allegedly made during the confrontation, including testimony that Anthony said words to the effect of, "Touch me and see what happens." The prosecution emphasized that Austin Metcalf was unarmed. The prosecution also argued that Anthony had opportunities to walk away from the confrontation before physical contact occurred. Medical testimony established that a single stab wound pierced the chest and heart of the victim, resulting in his death. For many observers, these facts create a straightforward narrative. They see a verbal conflict that escalated into a deadly encounter. They view the use of a knife against an unarmed individual as disproportionate. And for these viewers, the central question becomes very simple. Was deadly force justified under those circumstances? Many who answered no believe the prosecution successfully proved its case. To them, the facts point towards accountability for a decision that resulted in the loss of a young life. And that's why so many online have expressed confidence that a conviction is warranted. But that's only one side of the debate, because supporters of the defense often see the facts very differently. The defense focused on issues that many observers believe create reasonable doubt. One major point involved physical differences between the individuals involved. The defense highlighted testimony regarding size and weight differences. They also argued that the situation unfolded rapidly. According to the defense, this was not a carefully planned event. It was a chaotic, emotional confrontation involving teenagers in a crowded environment. The defense suggested that Anthony felt threatened. They argued that decisions were made within seconds, not minutes, not hours, but seconds. Defense attorneys also challenged aspects of witness testimony. They pointed out inconsistencies between early statements and later recollections, and they argued that memories can change over time, especially in a traumatic event. For many observers, these arguments matter because criminal trials are not simply that something tragic happened. Everyone agrees that something tragic happened here. The legal question often centers on intent, perception, and what a person reasonably believed in a particular moment. Supporters of the defense frequently ask, what was Anthony thinking in those seconds? What did he perceive? What did he fear? And could those perceptions create reasonable doubt? Whether someone agrees with those arguments or not, they help explain why many people watching the trial arrived at different conclusions. And that brings us what may be the most fascinating aspect of this case: human psychology. One of the strongest forces shaping public opinion is something called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is our tendency to notice information that supports what we already believe, while giving less attention to information that challenges our views. If someone enters this case already focused on personal responsibility and accountability, certain pieces of evidence may stand out more strongly. If someone enters this case focused on fear, self-preservation, and split-second decision-making, different pieces of evidence may feel more significant. Both people may be watching the same trial, but they're not necessarily processing it in the same way. Another powerful factor is emotional reasoning. Human beings are emotional creatures. We often feel first and analyze later. When a case involves teenagers, families, grief, and loss, emotions naturally become part of the conversation. Different pieces of evidence may feel more significant. That's understandable. But emotions also influence how we perceive evidence. And then there's group identity. People naturally identify with different communities. Sometimes those communities are geographic. Sometimes they are political. And sometimes they are cultural. And sometimes they're simply online communities built around shared beliefs. When people feel that their group is under attack, they often will become more protective of the narrative that supports their side. This can make compromise or nuanced discussion more difficult. Another factor is the role of social media itself. Social media platforms are not neutral environments. They are designed to maximize engagement, and engagement often comes from strong emotional reactions. Outrage spreads, fear spreads, anger spreads, but nuance often does not. As this case gained attention, social media became flooded with commentary. Some of that commentary was thoughtful, some of it was emotional, and some of it was simply wrong. Reports emerged of fake information circulating online. Fabricated claims spread rapidly. and false narratives appeared, and many people encountered those narratives before encountering verified information. This is one of the defining challenges of the digital age. Information moves faster than verification. And once a story aligns with what people already want to believe, it can become incredibly difficult to correct. Even after information is publicly debunked, traces of it remain online. People remember the emotional impact of the original claim. They may never see the correction, or they may reject the correction outright. That's one reason why public opinion can become disconnected from courtroom reality. Let's talk about another important difference, the difference between the internet and a jury. The internet operates on emotion, speed, and reaction. Juries operate very differently. Jurors don't get to decide cases based on viral clips. They don't get to rely on Facebook debates. They don't get to consider public commentary. They don't get to use rumors or speculation. Instead, jurors must focus on evidence admitted in court. They must follow legal instructions. They must apply the law exactly as the judge explains it. And they must determine whether the required legal standard has been met. That process can be frustrating for the public because public opinion often asks a more broad question. What do I think happened? A jury must answer a narrower question. What can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt under the law? And they are not always the same thing. And that's why verdicts often surprise people. The public may be evaluating emotion. The jury is evaluating legal standards. The public may be focused on narratives. The jury is focused on evidence. The public may be debating what feels right. The jury must decide what is legally justifiable. I think that this case offers a valuable lesson. Regardless of where someone stands on the evidence, this trial has become a mirror on how the public processes. We've seen how quickly narratives form and how quickly misinformation spreads. And we've seen how people with good intentions can interpret the facts completely differently. We've seen how social media amplifies division. And we've seen how difficult it can be to separate emotion from analysis. At the heart of this case involves a tragedy that has forever changed multiple families. And that reality should never be forgotten. But beyond the legal outcome, the public response itself has become a very interesting story and worth examining.